Hello, everybody. Hope you're doing good today. Pastor Zack Strong here. I'm here just to encourage you and strengthen you in the Lord. I'm so glad we've got this time together. I hope everything is well. We're believing God for great things. I'm sharing this week actually on prayer because I believe this is what God is calling us to as a people, as a region and as a nation. I'm asking all of my friends, I'm asking our church at Christ Church, I'm asking pastors and leaders throughout our region that we would join together, bring our churches together in some measure of prayer and cry out to God on behalf of our nation and the world today. You know, you've heard this saying that prayer changes things. What's interesting to me is I believe that with all of my heart, but I find most people operating actually opposite of that. I think we cry out in desperation, but I don't know that we are really truly believing that our prayer is making a difference. You know, in the book of Acts chapter 12, the Bible said that Herod, the king, stretched out his hand against the church. And he killed James, the brother of John, with the sword, and because he saw that it pleased the Jews. And then he proceeded further to seize Peter, and he put him in prison. And when he arrested him, listen to what the word said. This is Acts chapter 12. He put him in prison and delivered him to 4 squads of soldiers to keep him. That is about, I think that's about 16 different men watching over him. Could be more, but 4 squads of soldiers keeping him, intending to bring him before the people after Passover. Verse 5 says that Peter was therefore kept in prison, but listen to this, but constant prayer was offered to God for him by the church. Consistent, earnest prayer was pressed before God on Peter's behalf. I want to tell you something, church. I believe it's time that we earnestly pursue the Lord in behalf of our nation, in behalf of the world that we're in. I don't have to tell you this. We're all afraid by the events that are going on around us and the continuous thoughts and talk of COVID and everything else that is going. But the church must rise up in this hour. I believe God has given us a key, not through opinion, not through my frustration, not through my anger, but that we would use what God put in our hands. That if we would, the church, if we would pray, if we would seek after Him, God would hear from heaven and God would begin to move. The Bible said that when the church prayed earnestly and consistently for Peter, that the Bible sent an angel and he stood before Peter that night in the prison and says to rise up quickly. Matter of fact, he had to strike Peter on his hip. Peter, wake up. It's time to get up and get out of here. And God opened up the prison doors and released Peter and brought Peter before the church. Why? Because the people of God were crying out. I want to tell you, when you and I began to do what God tells us to do, if we'll operate by the Spirit and not by our flesh, not by our feelings, not by our emotions, but if you and I will begin to operate by the Spirit, supernatural things begin to happen. I don't mean evil things. I'm talking about God things. 1, God hears from heaven. Number 2, listen to what happens. The angel was released. An angel was released. Listen, we know the Bible tells us in Psalms 103, the angels are ministering spirits sent to minister for the heirs of salvation. That's you and I. Listen, friend, they don't move at complaint. They don't move at all the murmuring. But what they do move by is when somebody is crying out to God on behalf of someone else and declaring the word of God, angels go into action. They began to move on our behalf. Here's the third thing that began to happen. The prison doors began to break open. I believe, church, it's time that the prison doors, fear has gripped us. It has gripped our nation. And it's time that that prison door be unloosed. It's time it be open and God's people come out of prison in this hour. Will you join me? Will you pray with me and countless others that are praying around the nation and the world, beginning August the 1, 21 days of prayer and fasting on behalf of our nation.